Hi, Sue. It's
Hi.
interesting. I'm still showing up as Manchester by the Sea 1.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
not
interesting.
ringing up um, under my name.
I just made you host, I think.
So I could rename myself no matter.
John, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. I was trying to get my AirPods to work, but it's something is different than typical. It always happens to me. But I can hear you fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you for being accommodating. I'm just going to go and get a cup of water. I'll be right back.
Sure. Hi, Woody. Can you hear me?
Hi, Muffin and Chris.
Hi, John. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Muffin. Hi, John. Hi, Sarah Sue.
I've already said hello to Sue. That's why I didn't say it. That's what I was on earlier with Sue. Hey, Peggy.
Hi, sorry, I'm chewing.
Hello, Joan.
Hello, John. How are you?
Great. How are things?
Things are fine.
Nice.
Everybody around me is getting air conditioning.
Was that?
All the neighbors are getting air conditioning. There are a lot of installers in the neighborhood.
Oh,
Kind of late in the season.
I know.
it's the only time you can get them, huh? Now, I want to say, I think Sarah said that she's unavailable today.
I think she's traveling.
She's,
Sarah, is
yeah,
that-
she's in
Isn't she in
Africa.
another continent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John, just before we get started, I just want everyone to know that I have another meeting at 7 a.m. I have another meeting at 7, so I have to jump off. Chris has agreed to take any notes once I leave. So I'm sorry I wouldn't leave if it wasn't something I had to speak at. But
Thank you, Chris.
We have Sue covered.
So we have all of our, just from the Affordable Housing Trust, we have everyone but Gretchen. And unless I'm mistaken, this is a joint meeting with the Housing Authority. So we're going to be waiting for, I believe Beth is the new chair, right?
No, Elaine Person's the new chair for the Manchester Housing Authority.
I'm sorry, Irene, who was that?
Elaine Persons is the
Oh, okay,
new
Elaine
chair
Persons.
for the Housing Authority.
Okay. Hello, Irene. Sorry.
Hi,
not to
how are you?
say hello. Do you know if he plans to be at the meeting here?
Well, I thought they were going to. I didn't post it. Sue Brown said she didn't believe I needed to post it where she posted a joint meeting, but I believe I see Gretchen Wood's name up here.
Yeah, I see Gretchen.
Yep.
She is, unless I'm mistaken, she is Manchester Housing Authority, but she is a representative of the Housing Authority now to the Affordable Housing Trust, but no longer the chair. Is that correct, Gretchen?
That's correct. And I did, well, not in the last week, maybe, or 10 days, but when this first came up, I sent it to everybody. I think, well, I know Elaine said she was going to see me tonight, so I know she's aware of it.
Okay.
I think Beth.
So I guess a technical question is if Irene says it hasn't been posted, technically this is not a meeting, a public meeting for you guys, which, I mean,
Sue Brown
John.
said it was, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sue.
yeah, it is posted as a joint meeting.
okay. So it
Yeah.
serves the purposes of Manchester Housing Authority.
However, if they do not have a quorum,
A quorum, that's correct.
then you can open for them. They can still participate. They couldn't vote on anything.
Yeah,
I don't
Okay.
think what we're doing requires a vote tonight. It's more informational.
I agree totally.
Does that sound right to you, Irene, Gretchen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, why don't we wait another minute?
I'm
And
going to try calling.
yeah, and Gretchen and Irene, if you see other members of the Housing Authority appear on the screen, please inform us. Right
Okay,
now,
well,
I don't see any. We'll just wait for Gretchen to come back and then we can start. Sorry, everyone. Gretchen?
Okay, I just got in touch with Beth. She's coming on in a second.
Okay.
I'm gonna,
So if it's Beth and it's you, how many people do you need to have for a
we
quorum?
really only, I think we only need 2 because there's only 4 of us on the board right now.
Okay. Well, wait a minute because with the 2 of you, then you'll have a formal meeting.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to call Elaine too.
Yeah, I just sent her a text. Oh, okay. Elaine didn't get it. Okay. Let me send it to Elaine.
So Beth and Elaine, neither one got the thing from you, Sue, with the link on it.
Oh, apologies. Do they need me to send anything?
I'm sending it now. Beth needs it also.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on. I'm
Oh,
on.
you on?
Oh,
Okay.
hi, Beth.
I just went to the town's website to get it.
Oh, Beth is on.
Yep.
Good. Okay. So Beth, with you and Gretchen on. My
I do-
understanding is you
I do
have-
believe we still need the 3 though for a quorum.
I thought you only needed 50%. Is that not right?
What's that?
I thought you only needed 50% of your board to have a quorum. Is that not true?
I haven't heard that. I don't know.
All right, well, Elaine is trying to log on right now. She's, she didn't have the link. Did you send it to her, Irene?
I didn't know. I thought it went out to everybody. I assumed it did.
Okay,
Wait,
so
did you send it to her right now?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so she'll be on in a minute. So if you want to get started, John, that's fine.
okay, why don't at least I'll announce. I want to welcome everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is John Feuerbach, 5 Harold Street. This is a meeting of the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. I serve as the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. And the meeting is planned as a joint meeting with the Manchester Housing Authority. And Gretchen or Beth, when you get to the point where you have a quorum, please tell me, because then we can announce you in and we can start the formal public meeting. So anyway, I would so announce the start of the meeting dated September 29th, Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. And we've issued an agenda, and it's actually, there's a number of items. The first item is a presentation and discussion of the SEMA warrant articles for the town meeting. My understanding is we have some folks representing SEMA who are with us tonight who can speak to that, but just to frame it, I had some conversations with Jay, and we talked about the articles proposed. As context, the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority have got 2 articles, non-binding, that are going to appear before the town at the fall meeting. And one is, in essence, looking for support for the Housing Authority and Affordable Housing Trust efforts to on the plan to not only rehabilitate but create new units for the public housing authority sites, but equally important is to develop the Pleasant Street site. So one article is to get a non-binding vote to support community affordable housing on the Pleasant Street site. And then the second has to do with a non-binding. We want to see that the town would support waiving some form of acquisition cost, deed cost, ground lease cost associated with that parcel to lower the cost of development, so that would make the community affordable housing more attractive. So with that as background, that's going to be appearing in front of the town in the fall. Our concern when we saw the FEMA articles is that there could be some conflict in the minds of voters, in that the 2 SEMA articles deal, one with limiting the number of permitted units in a year to 50 and prohibiting, or not prohibiting, but requiring a second means of egress for projects over a certain size. And I know we have worked with SEMA, and we've enjoyed the support of SEMA over the last, I'd say last year, with regard to community affordable housing. We were a partner on the Powder House development by way of our pass-through. So we're talking the same talk in regards to the need to promote community affordable housing in Manchester. And one thing that the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority doesn't want to have happen, and I don't think you want to have that happen, is to create an inconsistent message that would be presented to the town. So if there's any way that we could hear you now, and give you an opportunity to explain the rationale for the articles. And I think probably more important is there a way that we could have language that
I did to get in.
understands that we're,
Oh.
as a town,
Did you copy and post it?
we're promoting community affordable housing, and we should all be rowing. We all should have our oars in the water at the same.
Okay, and you don't have that? Okay,
I
hold on.
don't know, Affordable Housing Trust or Housing Authority colleagues, is there anything that you would like to highlight before I invite the SEMA rep to talk? I take that as a no. So Jay, I see you there. I appreciate you being there. I know you and I spoke. I don't know if you want to frame the conversation, or is there someone else?
Sure. No, I can, John, thank you. It's Jay Boffick, 7 Boardman Ave, Manchester. I'm happy to start. I see Denny Hall is on the phone, and I suspect others may be, and they may certainly feel free to join in. Number one, I want to reiterate, John, what you had indicated before, which is that SEMA very, very much supports the efforts that are being undertaken by the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority. We have done so publicly, and we will continue to do so publicly. We think they are great developments, and they're thoughtful, and they're, frankly, addressing a significant need in the community. And frankly, we think it's a need that's not at all being addressed or would be addressed by the Shingle Hill proposed development. They are targeting a totally different audience that needs targeting. So we very much support the housing vision and very much support the sort of the development of Newport Park, the Plains, Loading Place Road, and the use of the DPW facility as a means to help facilitate that economically. And so the two articles that we have proposed for consideration at town meeting, one relates, as John mentioned, to the 2 access points. It's similar to the warrant article that was introduced at the last town meeting and was not passed. This is one that would require 2 paved access roads if the access road was greater than 500 feet and the number of units in the development exceeded 50 dwelling units. This is one that is going before the planning board and will be considered and soon by the planning board and be on the warrant for the planned fall meeting. I think that, the rationale there is safety. We do think it's important that developments that size, which, frankly are, larger than probably any residential, are larger than any existing residential development. We think, having 2 access roads is an important safety measure. We certainly, as in terms of both of these articles, we are certainly willing to have conversations with the Affordable Housing Trust, the Housing Authority, or anyone else if people believe that they need to be, modified or amended to be more consistent or not in conflict with any proposals. Frankly, with the 50 housing units that both relate to, we didn't see a conflict with anything in the housing vision because we viewed, and again, if we're incorrect about this, please let us know, but we viewed essentially in the housing vision 4 separate projects, the largest of which I think is 30 units. But if for some reason we're viewing that housing vision incorrectly, or people think that there is some sort of a conflict, we are more than open to discussing that and to working through language to address that. The second proposed article is one that would instruct the building inspector not to issue permits with respect to new residential structures if they would result in 50 new dwelling units in any 1 year, 12-month period, or would result in connection to the sewer of more than 50 dwelling units in any 1 year. And again, we did not think that this article was in conflict with any of the plans, given our understanding and belief based upon what's portrayed in the housing vision, is that those are separate projects. Those would take place over extended periods of time. It's a long-term plan. It's not going to be done in a 12-month period. As much as we may like to have that period shortened, I think our view was that this wouldn't really affect any of those proposals. The average new dwelling units that have been created in any 12-month period has been about 7. And so we believe that, even if you add that 7 new dwelling units to the 30 planned for Pleasant Street, you were still well below the limit. So again, the rationale for this is we do think that the town has got limited resources. The addition of large slugs of new housing, especially residential housing, could have a significant demand on public safety resources, on schools, on water and sewer. And therefore, we think it's appropriate to consider a limitation so as to avoid or minimize that kind of significant increase in demand on town services. So that's a sort of an overview of the rationale of the two articles.
Thank you.
And again, we're happy to discuss them and talk about if there is any misunderstanding or conflict. We're certainly happy to discuss that.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Housing Authority folks, Affordable Housing Trust folks, I know we've had some time to consider, and also in response to Jay's points, is there any question, comment, observation?
So John, I have a couple of things here.
Go ahead, Chris.
The first is a question, I guess, for Jay, which is this, all things considered here, I think we should be frank about this. This is a proposal that would attempt to block a 40B, such as Shingle Hill. It's obviously not going to be in time to do anything to Shingle Hill. So we're talking about a future, some sort of a future 40B. And it seems to me that the way the 40B works is that any local zoning ordinance is going to be overridden if we don't have the 10% SHI threshold bit. So if this is an attempt to stop 40Bs, it's not going to do that. And it may, what I wonder is if for some reason, maybe I misunderstand the point of the warrant about the 50 units in a year, but if, say, a project came in that we all agreed was a great idea with 49 units or even 50 units, would that mean no other houses in Manchester could be built that year besides the 50, or is this just in a single project?
It's not limited to a single project, Chris. So theoretically, you are correct. However, again, I think our view was that the likelihood of a project that scope was unlikely, and therefore we really didn't see this as impairing expected projects, certainly of the size and density that would be, at least in our view, likely going forward. It's certainly not intended or expected that it would impinge or impair on things that are set out in the housing vision, for instance. But in terms of the 40B aspects, I think we recognize and that these articles, if adopted, may not have an impact on the SLV project because they've already got their application in to the Zoning Board of Appeals for that project. Came in this week, is my understanding. But they could have applicability for future projects if they were proposed of that size and scale. And they could also, I think, be a demonstration of the community's views in terms of developments of this size and the impacts that it could have on the community, and potentially be something that could be the subject of discussion before the ZBA. And even if it's not the basis on which the ZBA may make a decision, it may be a factor that on appeal could be considered as evidence of the community's views. So we think that there's value in proceeding. We think this is consistent with the views of the community, and if it may not be it may not be definitive, if you would, but we think it could be a positive factor and therefore makes sense. If that answers your question.
Chris,
So
anything?
do you know of any other towns that have either of this kind of zoning ordinance in place?
We are, and I don't know, Denny, if you're still on, whether you have any information on that front, but.
Yeah, I do. I don't know if you guys can hear me. The limitation on the length of the single access road, virtually, I won't say it, there are a significant number of cities and towns in Massachusetts limit the length of a single access roadway. And then normal standard is, I would say, is 500 feet. In some cases, the town of Easton, for example, has a limitation of 1,200 feet, but you can only have 7 units on that particular road. So that is really a function of just plain good planning and safety. We are commissioning a report by a traffic engineer called Bayside Engineering that will be coming out shortly. They'll have a little more flesh out the number of cities and towns, and from their professional point of view, whether it makes sense or not. But generally speaking, a single access road that ends in a cul-de-sac, the average in zoning bylaws of a number of towns is between 500 and 600 feet. And in some cases, like in the case of Easton, they limit, actually, they also stipulate how many units you can have on that road. And as I said, in Easton, it's 1,200 feet for 7 units. So it really is a function, that whole warrant is a function of what we see as maybe a hole in the current zoning. And it's a safety issue. Obviously, we can't do anything about a single access road that was built in 1700, but it does pertain, I think, to good solid planning. And in this case, particularly, we think it makes sense from a safety perspective.
Denny
And
and
has
Jay,
anybody
quick follow-up.
vetted this with the fire department and the police department? Have they made any statements about this? I do remember in the SLV hearing, the fire chief seemed to think that the access driveway was perfectly safe. But maybe he's changed his mind. I wonder if.
I don't believe he has changed his mind. There's a significant number of people who would take issue with it, who are traffic engineers, city planners, land planners. But you're right, the fire chief hasn't changed his mind. And his point was that these buildings, if they were built, would be sprinklered. And to his knowledge, nobody had died in a sprinklered building. However, maybe he either hadn't considered what happens if somebody had a medical emergency. And if that road, for whatever reason, was impassable, that medical emergency would go undealt with. But from a fire perspective, he certainly has a point of view. But if you asked, and I haven't asked, but if you asked an ambulance driver about it, you might get a different point of view.
John, can I interrupt for a minute? Elaine is on the phone. She wasn't able to get on the computer, but she is on the phone now, so we do have a quorum.
Great. So it's an official public meeting of the Manchester Housing Authority, in addition to the public meeting of the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. Great, thank you. Any further comment to the presentation?
John, I just had a question to be reminded either from you or Sue. The project, just take the planes, calls for the renovation of existing units and the addition of new units. Is that addition of new units going to bring us up over 50 new dwelling units? And would that then create the position of needing that secondary access road?
You
And if
raised,
so, where do we come up with an access road out of the plains?
you raised a couple very important points. Not just the planes, but we're looking at up to maybe 26 units.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Newport, we're looking at up to anywhere from 18 to 24.
Right. So then the total in those rehab and existing become more than 50 units.
Well, to Jay's point, on their warrant article, he was referring to new units over 50. My concern is
That was right.
preliminary. We still need to do a request for proposal for a developer. The developer is going to look at the plan in our proof of concept plan and hopefully improve upon that. But if they move forward with what we have right now, there could be a situation where a development of those three sites, the Plains, Newport, Loading Place, and let's throw in Pleasant, that could exceed 50. A construction start is conceivable
Right.
in a calendar year. But then Muffin, you make the point that these are the sites, the Plains is an existing development that has got access right now. Based on my read, it would require an additional access point.
And again, John, if I may, as I said, we are certainly open on both of these articles to reflect existing circumstances or planned circumstances. And if they need to be, we need to think about the numbers of dwelling units. The one relating to the building permits really does focus just on net new dwelling units. So that example of the Plains wouldn't apply to that particular article. So the renovations wouldn't be additional to the new units. You'd just be looking at the net new units. In terms of the access point, that is not drafted that way. But again, we certainly would be willing to think about what would be an appropriate way to make them more consistent.
Okay, and not to short our discussion because I want to have a continuing discussion. I got a couple of points myself, but one of my takeaways is if the Housing Authority and the Affordable Housing Trust could convene with SEMA and the authors of that to figure out, is there some appropriate language that we could introduce so that when the matter is introduced at the town meeting, we all know that there's always modification. There's a possibility of a modification of a warrant at a town meeting. So perhaps we could work on some language that would be acceptable to us, and that might be a better presentation than it is currently.
I would like to make one more point, if I may.
No, go ahead. I don't mean to short the discussion, Chris. Go ahead.
So under the current zoning ordinance for the town of Manchester, it's really impossible to build any kind of a development of more than 4 units without at least a special permit and probably a variance. So no one's got the right to build 50 units anywhere in town without going through a proper vetting process. So, unless it's a 40B, which is going to override all this, we already have theoretically the guardrails in place to make sure that the development is safe and compatible with the rest of the town. So I'm just wondering why we're going through this whole exercise when we have the controls already in place. We're just sort of piling on, if you will, make it even more difficult for these kinds of developments to happen.
If I may, I don't, I think that's a fair point. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that there could still be a determination to grant the special permit. And I think what we're saying is that at some level, we just don't think that we should be, even from a after review perspective, that there should be that level of discretion. It should just be, the answer should be no, because of in part because of the significant increased demands on the town and its resources.
So you're thinking that the planning board's not capable of, or the ZBA, of making the proper decision here?
Well, again, I don't want to say that they're not capable. That may not be the focus. That they may not believe that that's necessarily part of their determination, or someone may challenge that as part of their determination. I don't know, but I think we're saying on the outside, this is not 4 units. This is 50.
Okay. My concern is more global, and I touched on it somewhat in my opening statement. And I think folks on this call are aware that the town and perhaps some representatives who are on this call are very close to sending a letter off to DHCD, trying to make the case to allow existing income eligible residents of development such as Powder House eligible for supportive housing inventory. Currently, that's not the case. Those units are only eligible if the unit is vacated, and then there is an approved affordable housing plan and deed restrictions. We're trying to make the case in this letter that that's nonsense. Naturally occurring affordable housing protected by taking off the market is an important thing, and those income eligible tenants should be considered at the SHI. But I refer to this letter because in the body of the letter, we talk about the efforts that the Manchester by the Sea has taken, and the planning board is proposing modifications to zoning bylaws to ease development restrictions. We're promoting I wouldn't say a permissiveness, but an openness. And my concern is with that as backdrop, it's almost like we're talking, it could be perceived that we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, because we then have these, what I consider to be restrictive warrants. So it's me editorializing, Jay. I want to take you up on, and I appreciate you saying that there's an opportunity for all of us to, as you mentioned, modify or amend. Anyway, that's my global concern, and we've talked about the possible impact of the unintended consequence on the work that we're doing with relative to, would we be limited to 50 new units? But the second access is, it appears to me that should be looked at in plan review, to just do it indiscriminately and not looking at particular site circumstances. It seems like we could be bringing on a problem that we're really trying to avoid. And SLV taught me that there are site constraints that we're trying to protect as a town, whether it's water resources or habitat and stuff. And with that in mind, we're trying to limit impervious surface or more try to promote green space. Well, I personally, I would prefer to have the planning board or another entity do a plan review to determine whether or not egress is needed, knowing that we could possibly avoid impervious surfaces. So I just think that we might, by going forward with this warrant, we might be getting something that we might not want to have. Any other comments? before we move on? A question directed to the SEMA group?
John, I just want to say that I agree with you. When I read this, my first thought was, is this going to add fuel to the fire of saying, oh, we're all NIMBYs in this town and we don't want any low income? I think, especially in light of the letter that we are about to send, which I think is very nicely phrased and non-confrontational at all, that this might just put it in another light.
Yeah, if I could characterize it as almost like a self-inflicted wound. We're all working to address the supportive housing inventory issue that the town is confronting, and it's put us in an unfavorable position with regard to 40Bs. Anything else? Why don't we conclude this portion of the agenda? I want to thank Denny. I want to thank Jay. I want to thank others who are here representing SEMA. And if we could commit, I would propose this, and we don't need a vote, but I would propose this on behalf of the Affordable Housing Trust, is that if we could speak amongst ourselves about what would be appropriate language, and if we could perhaps have a representative work with SEMA on possible language modifications that could perhaps be introduced at the town meeting. Does it seem appropriate?
John, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, good. I got a new computer. I'm sorry for being late.
No.
I had
Hello,
a hard
Elaine.
time getting back in here. Sorry.
So what, I mean, I'm not proposing a vote in any regard. Again, I'm just editorializing, I say, but I want to take up Jay in his point, modifying or amending. Jay or Danny, anything to conclude before we move on?
Not from my perspective.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So looking at the agenda, we have update on the Board of Selectmen non-binding vote to use a DPW site to support the MHA redevelopment. This is reference to the material that was sent out, and it has to do with the two items, and it's advanced by the Housing Authority, Affordable Housing Trust with the Board of Selectmen. And it's to see if the town will vote to approve a non-binding endorsement of the development plan advanced by the Manchester Housing Authority and Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. That includes the town-owned site on Pleasant Street with sites owned by the Housing Authority on Loading Place, The Plains, and Newport Park. And then the second aspect of that is to further approve a non-binding endorsement of foregoing some or all revenue from a possible sale or lease of the Pleasant Street site to a future developer, so that the acquisition costs and thus the development costs could be limited or reduced in the development plan to assist in the provision of the community affordable housing units. I know, Muffin, is there anything that you want to follow up on that? It's official now, I believe. It's been submitted.
We submitted the question, the article to the Board of Selectmen. They haven't approved they haven't accepted the whole warrant yet, but I think that's probably happening at whenever their next meeting is. And this article has also, Alan Wilson has read it through it and offered us a couple small modifications to it, which we took into account when we submitted it to the board. So I think our work in terms of that article is we're done until it's time to speak to it at town meeting.
Yeah, and it's simple and it's concise, and it really is a follow-up to for folks who might not know the background, it's a follow-up to a presentation that the Affordable Housing Trust made to the Board of Selectmen, and it followed up a vote of the Board of Selectmen that the Affordable Housing Trust should draft articles, and that Muffin would be the liaison to the Affordable Housing Trust. So with that in mind, the Affordable Housing Trust drafted the articles, ran them by Alan Wilson, town moderator, and they're in front of the Board of Selectmen. So any comment or question on that? That is really just a summary of where we are. Okay. I'm going to propose that let's change the agenda a little bit, since we have referred to this.
Excuse me, I do have a question.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. One sec. I missed that. I'm sorry, Sandy, hand up, my fault. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. Is there a copy of your proposed wording for the town meeting available for citizens to review?
Muffin, is it official? And is it at that point where now it would be publicly available?
I would imagine it becomes that way when the Board of Selectmen accepts the warrant articles. Is that right, Sue?
I believe that would be right. I think they're still managing the language, but I would expect it all to be official at one time.
Right. So why don't we just commit that once it is approved by the Board of Selectmen and it is official, it will be, I'm assuming it will be made publicly available to Manchester by the Sea folks in the same way any other article would be made available.
So what is there a time deadline?
I have no idea when the board is going to formally accept and close the warrant. Do they meet next week, Sue?
They do.
Yeah, so maybe it's next week, Sandy. That I'm not sure of, so I wouldn't want to be quoted on.
Okay. So just a couple questions. Is it clear in the article that the DPW site will not have affordable housing on it? Because the past I've seen, it sort of blends it together and it's not very clear. So just making sure that it's clear that the DPW site does not have affordable housing on it.
Yeah, it's a two-part. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say Jeffrey Bodman Turner is on, and he has his hand up, so I think he wants to clarify when those might be available. And then I would just say that we don't really know at this point whether it will have affordable or not, and we won't really know that until there's a developer has been selected. So I don't think we could say one way or the other whether there may be some, there won't be any. I think it's premature to say that. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Okay.
So I just want to recognize Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, John. Just a couple of pieces of information. I'm not going to address this article specifically because that's a matter before the board and the board would have to act on it. But in terms of timing, special town meeting is different than annual town meeting. We have up till 2 weeks before the town meeting to approve the warrant. Tentatively, we're working on a date on the second week in November to hold town meeting. We're just trying to iron out some details, and that will be reviewed at our next meeting on October 4th. As far as the warrant itself goes, we probably will not approve the warrant until our meeting on October, let's see, the 18th, which is well within the 2-week boundary. So timeframes, 2 weeks before, October 18th is the current plan to approve the warrant. And we'll have details on the venue and the date. We're sorry that it's taken so long to get to that. Alan and town officials and the Board of Selectmen has been scrambling to try and figure out what's the safest way that we can accommodate the largest number of people. And also do a meeting that's not going to be so extended that it presents a COVID safety hazard. So those are the issues before the board, which will be discussed on Monday, October 4th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
I just had 2 questions on the DPW conceptual site plan. One being, it would appear from the write-up and from the diagram that there wouldn't be any, new trees taken down, or essentially that the homes would be built on the existing cleared lot. So I just wanted to confirm that that was the case. And then the second question was, when you look at the conceptual site plan, there appears to be a road that sort of heads off to the northeast, almost like a secondary access. And when I pull up an overlay of properties, it seems like it would go through, private property. So I don't know if that conceptual site plan, if that secondary road was added in by mistake, or I don't know who owns plot here, 58045. I guess I could pull that up, but it seems like it could go through someone's house.
No, thank you for bringing it up. And in all the meetings that I have been involved with, and I believe all Affordable Housing Trust folks and Housing Authority, we start by saying it is extremely preliminary. It really is just a proof of concept plan. I don't believe there was no survey work or plot plan work.
Right.
No, but it really is just to do an assessment, basic assessment of the sites to see what would be feasible. I think where it becomes interesting and it becomes more specific is when we put out the request for proposal and we have a range of developers to select, and then the developers will getting more into the dynamics and the specifics. So for example, all site plans regarding trees and placement of buildings and unit mix and stuff like that. That's when it will be ironed out. So I just want to, I'm sorry if we sound like a broken record in that regard.
No, that's all right. I guess just a few other points, as long as I have the floor. I'm the head of research for a pretty large, global real estate investor. Know a little bit about affordable housing, and the firm I work for makes investments into it. Look, I think the idea of keeping that site as free to a developer or low cost to a developer is a nice idea, that would flow through to the ultimate residents. But I think if we're being realistic about it, any private equity real estate investor who's is going to use percent of area median income or other metrics to determine what they're able to charge for rents there. So unless an approval of that site includes some sort of is contingent on some sort of additional cap, that savings is going to end up in the developer's pocket, it would seem to me. So from that standpoint, unless it's contingent on something, I'd say let the town take the revenue.
Yeah, it will come down to project underwriting and the role that the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust will have, as well as the Department of Housing and Community Development, which will probably get involved on 2 levels. One, for funding for the new construction under their housing new creation arm, as well as it's not related to the Pleasant Street site, but then when we look at the renovations of the existing public housing authority. DHCD has had their own wing that would deal with that, but it's not going to be as straightforward as you think, where the developer is going to propose something and then they're going to get excess proceeds. We do project underwriting to limit the amount of, in essence, subsidy that will be required to make the units available as community affordable housing.
Okay, yeah, that
John?
makes sense.
Yeah, I'm 1 sec. I just want to recognize Sue, because I know she's on a time constraint. She may want to have a closing statement or something to say.
Thanks, John. These are important discussions, but I just want to remind you that we don't have the affordable housing or that project on our agenda tonight. And we have a lot to get through. So if anyone else has any further questions regarding that particular project, we need to have that at a different time.
My apologies. I thought I saw it mentioned in the minutes, or in the agenda, the approval of that.
No, thank you.
That's something we could perhaps always have on our agendas going forward, understanding the interest that folks in the town have for this and the outreach that we're doing, and that's going to elicit comments and stuff. So there should be a forum where folks can have an opportunity to ask questions. So I would suggest that going forward, we should have an item just for discussion on the plan. But I understand what you're saying, Sue. We have a full agenda now, and I agree we should move forward. But thank you. Donald, is that? So I just want to mix the agenda around, and I want to, since we've referred to the letter that the town is working on to send out to DHCD, if we can just discuss that. Chris, do you mind giving a little background on that? I know you have been working as a representative of the Affordable Housing Trust with the Board of Selectmen, and could you just explain what is the situation and where we are currently? And then
Sure.
I think we can also close with we have had a chance to look at the letter, and are there any comments that folks would suggest?
Okay, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds here, but let's just say that the SEMA has came to the conclusion that it might be a good idea to get the units at Powder House Lane put on the subsidized housing inventory as quickly as possible. The difficulty is that DHCD, which is the state agency that controls this thing, has a number of requirements to put units on. And one of them is that all units to be put on the inventory have to be marketed through a fair housing marketing plan. And the existing tenants at Powder House Lane weren't tenanted that way. So in order to qualify them for listing on the SHI, they would have to be evicted and new tenants brought in that were brought in through a fair housing marketing plan. SEMA correctly pointed out that that's very unfair and would have an unintended consequence of forcing a number of income qualified tenants to be put out on the street. So they drafted a letter for the town to consider, for the town to send to DHCD, requesting that, well, their first shot was a waiver to get this to happen. But after a meeting with a group of us, we all thought that actually this is a cause that should be expanded to beyond the town of Manchester and may actually be a policy change for DHCD. That's something, it was an issue they frankly probably had not considered. So we're asking them to consider it. And although it won't probably affect the 40B SLV project that's in front of the town now, it could have it would be a good way of incentivizing towns like Manchester to put some of the resources available into the acquisition of affordable units that already exist without having to boot the tenants out, essentially. So that's what this letter is doing. And I think I should say Jody Morris has done a great job in putting this together. It's a very articulate letter. I suggested a couple of changes to it that we can discuss tonight, but they're not really, they're more formatting than anything else.
I agree. Yeah, when I looked at it, the letter that was circulated, the substantive nature of the letter remains, and you were just providing some wordsmithing. Thank you, Chris, for the summary. Any comments from the Affordable Housing Trust, Housing Authority in response to what Chris said in your review of the letter?
No, just that I'm in agreement with what we're trying to do. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. And there are some nonsensical aspects, you know, about those things, like clearly you're not going to evict existing qualified tenants. So if we could get, if they are able to do it in some kind of timely fashion, that would be one thing, but it's possible we may end up having to request a waiver if it's going to require some large policy change that's going to take them a year to do. You know what I mean? You know how it goes.
Personally, I think it's, I know Jody and I had a conversation about this a couple weeks ago with regard to another project that we'll be talking about in a minute. And it just really doesn't make any sense if we have current units that are not restricted and we have a responsible developer, whether or not it's a for-profit or a nonprofit, acquire them and can establish that the residents are income eligible and they're going to restrict them in perpetuity. Why they are not counted as affordable units and counted on the SHI, it's something that it's appropriate that we're pushing on now. And so I fully support that.
Yep.
Okay, so the timing is, I believe it's on a fast track. We could circulate, unless there's a comment to Chris's comments, I would support moving your letter back to your working group, Chris, with your comments. Folks okay with that?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think the Board of Selectmen wants to act on this pretty quickly, so
I hear you.
that would be before our next meeting.
Okay. Jody, one sec, Chris. Jody, I see you got your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, John. I just wanted to add a quick bit of color that the folks from the North Shore CDC, which are the developers and owners of the Powder House Lane project, actually went to the DHCD to discuss this issue, and they were encouraged to have the town write a letter to the DHCD. So this was really more by invitation than our coming up with this idea to do this on our own. So I think that's important to know. I think the other thing that's important to know is that the folks at the North Shore CDC, which develop these kinds of properties all the time, although Powder House Lane is a little different, they were very surprised to hear that this was the DHCD policy to not include these. So I think this is something that is not far outside the realm of possibility. And as far as the timing is concerned, I think the Board of Selectmen will be meeting next week, and I think they'd like to have this approved by the MAHT. Maybe you could give Chris the right to do this on your behalf if we're very close to where it needs to be, but I think people are anxious to get this out sooner rather than later.
No, I think we're this close. Unless I hear any objection, why don't we just allow Chris to move that? Affordable Housing Trust folks, you okay with that?
Yep, that's fine.
Fine with me.
Great.
Totally. And thank
Fine
you
with
for
me
what
too.
you're doing.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll take the ball and run with it. Thank you.
Yeah, let's do that, Chris, and you'll stay in touch with us as needed. And I want to just thank Jody for all the hard work that you've done on this and working with Chris and the others on this little working group. Jody, if you can hold on for just one moment, we have an item here. It's just an update on the Affordable Housing Trust Housing Authority Housing Project Survey. I am concerned that Sue has had to leave at 7 o'clock, and she'd be a resource on the status of this. Is there anyone else who could speak to it? I know we've had some back and forth emails, but in terms of where we are currently.
I think it's Sue, John, that needs to fill us in.
Okay, it's my fault. I apologize. I know we had some important items here. I think we covered some good ground, but we could have taken Sue while she was here. But so we're gonna pass this along.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Peggy. You there?
Yes.
Are you prepared to give a quick summary of the emergency rental and mortgage assistance program?
Yeah, I just texted Cheryl, who's the program director, to join us. At this meeting, we were going to give the update of where things stand and then also talk about some potential thoughts about how to move forward, given the status of COVID.
Okay, so are you waiting for a colleague?
Yeah, she's joining now.
Well, I wanted to, do we want to just hold this for a second and give Jody a moment to talk about something?
Could I just interrupt for a minute to say that I think that's all that you need from the Housing Authority, is that correct?
Gretchen, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I usually do a better job in that regard. The Manchester Housing Authority is on specific to the joint plan. And I just want to clarify for the Manchester Housing Authority folks that those matters are complete. And now the Affordable Housing Trust is going on to other items. So I want to give you the opportunity to close your portion of the meeting.
I'll make a motion that we close.
A second.
Elaine, you have to, Elaine, you're muted.
Yeah, I don't know why I was muted, but I'll make that second motion.
No, you have to, you're the chairman now. We made
Oh,
the
that's
motion.
right.
You
Now I
have
gotta
to say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Until we see each other
Good
again.
night.
And thank you. And sorry again for the being so late.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Good night.
So I assume that because I'm your representative from the Housing Authority, do I stay on for this whole meeting now? Is that correct?
Yes, that is,
Okay.
Yeah.
that you don't have a free pass now.
All right. Excellent.
You are the representative of the Housing Authority, so you would
Yeah.
you'd be with us here right now, and
Okay.
we're very happy for that, Gretchen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, I just wanted to let you know that Cheryl's joined us now, so we can move on to that
Why don't-
item if
why
you
don't-
want
why don't
to.
we do that, since the ordering of the agenda has this, and then Jody will get to you in just in a minute.
So I just
this
wanted to
item here
introduce,
is a review of the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust Emergency Rental and Mortgage Assistance Program that I think we were probably the first, if not one of the first affordable housing trusts in the Commonwealth who implemented this in response to COVID. And we were able to do it because of Peggy and her relationship with the nonprofit. Go ahead.
yeah, I will say Manchester, at least regionally, was the first. And there were other communities that then followed, sometimes through their community preservation groups, but it was the first area affordable housing trust to do so, thanks to Chris Olney's initiative and noting of the possibility. So Manchester as a community was able to act a lot quicker than some other towns were. So that was a win for the residents of the town. I just wanted to introduce Cheryl DePrimio. She's here on Zoom with us. She's the Director of Community Services at Action Inc. And as folks on the trust know, I'm the CEO at Action Inc. And we were just going to give an update on the status of the assistance fund and then bring up a couple of items that we had discussed in the past. And I asked Cheryl to join us so she could give some more firsthand accounts of some of the things that some of the participants in the program have struggled with, or some potential ideas for, other adjustments to how the program works. So to date, we've committed, as of a few weeks ago, we've committed, a little over $103,000 to residents of town to assist them with their rent and mortgage. All of the assistance.
Is that 103 or 130? I'm sorry.
103.
103. Thank you. Sorry.
That's as of several weeks ago. So just shy of 104,000 that have been committed. The average assistance per client was $5,766. So was what it averaged out to. And the fund was specifically dedicated to folks who are impacted by COVID-19. So all of these resources went to households that were struggling based on that challenge. And sort of where we are today is we have a balance of about 48,000 or less left in the fund. And so the fund is set to close out based on our original contract. So we were looking at how much is left and looking at what some of the challenges have been. I think Cheryl can talk in more detail, but some of the things we've run into are folks that come to us that are in domestic violence situations, not necessarily COVID related, or folks that need help with a security deposit or move-in costs, as opposed to just, straight rental costs. So Cheryl, maybe if you could just jump in and talk about, some of the challenges and some of the particular cases that we've had, and what you might recommend in terms of the use of funds going forward, if that's approved.
Sure. Thank you, Peggy. I went through the applications this week just to get a sense of the kind of people that needed assistance from this fund. And we have helped 18 different families. Most of them needed the assistance, or all of them needed the assistance because of job loss due to COVID. Quite a few in Manchester were people who were self-employed and, just lost their business completely because of COVID, or, had a significant drop in business. There might've been a partner or a spouse that was working, but they also had a decrease in wages and such. What we did find is that in Manchester, we had several families family members who had to leave work because they had an immune compromised person in the home. We had one who was a nurse and had to leave her job because her husband was very ill. And so she couldn't be working in the hospital. So that, that's the kind of thing that we tend to see in spite of COVID, is people with hopefully temporary health situations that cause them to fall back on paying bills. Peggy mentioned domestic violence also. What we've seen in Manchester is kind of interesting. We've had a few families, women leaving domestic violence situations who previously had good jobs and have left with their kids. And they tend to look for small towns where it's less likely that the former spouse is able to find them. So it's interesting that those have showed up more in Manchester or even in Rockport. And it can be really challenging for them because they often leave with nothing. So it's difficult. for them to get us all the documentation and everything that we require, you know, the kids' social security cards and birth certificates and that sort of thing. Out of the 18 families that we helped, 16 of them needed rental assistance. We only had 2 that needed help with mortgages, which surprised me. I thought we might see more of that, but we had quite a few renters in Manchester that needed the assistance. Most of the families, if they needed anything over 4,000, and this has sort of been across the board for all the funds we have, we refer them to the RAFT program, which is the federal funds, because it does take longer and the landlords get a little bit more anxious about it. But, you know, they have a lot of money available. So pretty much the funds that we've had, we're trying to safeguard them as much as we can and refer those folks down to the RAFT program. The other thing that we have come across is that we have had a couple people in Manchester that were looking for help with security deposits, which we generally couldn't do because we only use this fund for COVID-related reasons. And a lot of times when people were moving, they didn't have the money for the security deposits. We tend to see that particularly with folks who are on a fixed income. They might be moving into senior housing or something, but don't really have the money for the security deposit, you know, and need help with that. Fortunately, we do have other funds that we could use for that, but it would be great if we had some money to help Manchester residents with those kinds of things. Any questions for me?
None from me right now. I know, I'm just thinking out loud. Was it the September? Was it September 30th or did we?
Yeah, it's set to, we had talked about it at the last meeting or the one before, just that as we come to an end, there are still funds that were set aside that haven't been spent down. So do we extend the time but keep it COVID only related, or do we extend the time and add some of these other options so that there's a little more flexibility to help the folks that have come forward needing help but not had a COVID sort of job loss or wage decrease issue for needing the assistance?
But it's planned to expire at the end of this month, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, the way that, I mean, we did an extension before when we increased the fund, we did an extension, but we're now at the end of that extension. So the question is how to move forward and what's.
Can I just add one? Peggy was really close to the number I have. That we have spent 46,220. That we have that much left. But I also track what we've projected as far as applications that have been approved but haven't been submitted for payment yet. And that figure is about 38,760. So that means all the commitments that we've made to people that we will help them. So I guess my question is, what do we do on September 30th with those commitments that we've made?
Well, I have an answer to that. I think I'd like to move, there are a couple of things to do here, but the first step I think is I'd like to move that we extend the program until the end of the year. That'd be December 31st, 2021 as a first step. Just get that happening.
I agree. At a minimum, I think we should be doing that.
Is that a motion, Chris? Can we take care of that?
Motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
That is approved. I would be open to considering use of the fund in response to what Cheryl had, but I would like to give, I don't need to be too much of a stickler, but if we could have like a little summary of maybe a bullet point of what it is that would be recommended. I think it's helpful for me to look at that.
Sure.
So I have a question,
I
actually.
don't know what, just 1 second, Chris, just on that point. Are folks, does that seem reasonable just to get a very rudimentary recommendation that we can consider?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I wonder if there are some legal requirements, limits to how we can spend money under the COVID program, or does it have to be COVID? I don't know. I know this is sort of an exception that the state approved back when COVID started. I don't know whether.
I don't think we're bound by that, Chris. I think when we look at it's what can we as an affordable housing trust, as long as we're within the
Parameters of our trust.
of how we're
Yeah. Well, and also whether the funds that we're using can be used that way. It's the other thing we need to think about.
Well, we've done these types of programs in other communities using community preservation funds before COVID, not COVID related. So it's possible to include that as an allowable housing related, if say we do moving costs and security deposit or something. I think the thing too is because Cheryl and her team have been really good about trying to look at all the pots available and sort of access those bigger federal pots or state pots before using the local pots of money. So that's been really good because I think it's helped stretch the Manchester dollars as well as the Rockport and Gloucester and other Ipswich, other dollars that we've been using in those communities. So I think that's why we are lucky enough to be in the position to consider it. I think before when it was just straight COVID, we were just trying to help people stay housed but things have changed and there are still related effects, but it's just not as direct a line from COVID as it was in the initial phases of the fund.
Okay.
Can I just add too, as far as being COVID related, we are still seeing some of that because of workers who are afraid to go back to their jobs because they do have vulnerable family members at home. So there is still a COVID need out there, but not as strong as it was last year.
So we could put together a brief, couple paragraphs just with sort of this, what we're talking about, and then the recommendations for types of use.
Yep.
And furthermore, if you can just forward to the group that little summary you do when you do your summary, because I think as you're aware, I then pass it along to the anonymous donor who is helping Affordable Housing Trust. So I keep the donor aware of how we're going. And I think it'd be good. I can also maybe include the recommendations and just take a temperature of the donor. If the donor express interest in continuing support.
Okay.
Can I just add that the past year has been really tough for our staff, hearing everybody's stories. We asked them for a narrative of why they're in the position that they're in. And it's just been incredible that we've had these funds to be able to offer people, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. All right, so then we have a vote that was approved that will extend our involvement with Action Inc. until December, last day of the 2021. We'll call it December 1st, and then we'll table for now, possibly expanding our involvement based on soon to come to us recommendations that we'll be able to act on. Great, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Very much.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Cheryl deserves a round of applause. Cheryl's one of those, she's talking about her staff, but Cheryl has been on the front lines of all of this. And like you said, dealing with a lot of people in crisis and mobilizing things really quickly to get assistance out to everyone in our service area. So you deserve acknowledgement for that too, because I know you've been working like a nut for many months at this point, and you and your team have been phenomenal in terms of getting help to people.
And
You
it's-
know,
it's
we
great to
couldn't have
hear.
done this without action, and so my thanks especially to Cheryl for all the work she's been doing.
Thank you.
And what I like hearing is how our involvement, you're coordinating your work. It's maybe not just the use of our funds, but it's coordinating assistance with existing programs that are in place, whether draft or, so that's nice having a coordinated care. It's always important.
I should add too that when we refer people to the RAF program or for those federal funds, we don't just send them down there. We help them do the applications and gather the paperwork. So we're not just shoving them off to someone.
Thank you. Well, great. Next item on the agenda is a discussion with Jody Morse regarding 3335 Union Street.
Thank you,
Jody,
John.
you heard, great. Okay, excellent. Just as a background, I'm just going to summarize the email that I sent to the Affordable Housing Trust. I had a conversation with Jody where she expressed interest in accessing some Manchester by the Sea home funds that are allocated to the town and possibly tying into our funding to support converting some units that she has in her control. So we talked about a number of items, and we thought it'd be important for Jody to meet with us here and present, I don't know if it's a plan, but certainly a concept that you're brewing, and to see if the Affordable Housing Trust could help in any way.
Thank you. So this is definitely conceptual. I have some numbers. I've got information on the building. I think probably everybody here probably knows the building. It's on the corner of Beach Street and Union Street. It's still referred to as the Zach's building. It's that big mustard colored Victorian. And my husband and I bought it in 1995. And I think we've just had a confluence of events in the last year with the purchase of Powder House Lane, with the threat of a 40B, and then with the crafting of this letter that's going to the DHCD. And I start believing my own, wording that this is really urgent and critical that we preserve these naturally affordable or naturally occurring affordable. It's kind of a long phrase that they use for these apartments that are all over this town. And I think one of the things that we forget is that we're losing these. So we're fighting to try to build new units and increase our inventory of affordable housing. At the same time, we have wonderful developers who are doing a great job. I mean, you just have to drive around town and they're resiting these houses that have apartments, they're repainting them, they're fixing them up, and they're raising the rents. And I know this has happened certainly in the last 2 or 3 years with a whole bunch of buildings on Union Street. On Central Street. And I do know that those rents have gone up. There's one catty corner to where we are, and the 1-bedroom unit on the second floor, the house is for sale now, is now renting for $3,000 for this unit. So I know this is happening. And so I kind of came up with this idea, well, can we help get these units on the SHI? Is there something that my husband and I can do? Maybe we could take 3 or 4 out of the 7 units that we have and put a deed restriction on. So I started making lots of phone calls to housing authorities, to the home consortium in Peabody, and hearing from all these people. They said, Jody, this is a great idea. You should go to your Affordable Housing Trust and get some money. You probably have work that you need to do on this building, and so on and so forth. So I called John. So this is a concept. I think it's a very viable, interesting approach for the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust to not just look at redevelopment of projects and not just look at 40Bs in terms of adding new units, but to preserve the units that we already have in town. It's very economical. We're going to lose them if we don't, not all of them, but certainly they're at risk for being lost and sold. Actually, when we bought this building back in 1995, it had been renovated, so in the 70s, to make it into condos. So this is not, outside the realm of possibility that this would happen. So a couple of numbers I thought I'd just throw out. We've got 7 apartments in the building. As I said, we've owned it for a long time. We've put a lot of money into it between, new heating system and some new windows, not all new windows. We're actually just putting a new roof on it right now. If you drive by next week, you're going to see roofers all over the top of that very tall building. We have put a water line in so that one unit in the building is actually sprinkled. We've redone all the kitchens and bathrooms except for one unit because the woman has lived there for 35 years and we can't really renovate around her. But we put a lot of money into it, but I would really like to sprinkle the entire building. And I'd like to put a little laundry facility down in the first floor, and I'd like to redo the other windows so that it's tighter and more energy efficient. And so the concept would be that we go after home funds and go after, some of the funds that the Affordable Housing Trust has as a grant. And in return, we put a deed restriction on a certain number of these units. And we wait for the DHCD to change their policy to allow those to go on the SHI. And, with very little funding from the town, we get four new SHI units. So that's the concept, and that's what I was going to bring to you today.
Thank you. And since the Affordable Housing Trust was established, I believe in 2016, I'm 99% certain that was the date. And when we assessed what are the ways that we could intervene, one of the ideas that we considered was something exactly as what you're describing here. We're all familiar with the town, and we know the lack of available developable vacant land. And we thought if we could engage with owners of private properties and discuss the possibility of converting units, that could be very, very helpful. So in fact, in some of our early meetings, I recall we met with some private owners to discuss this concept. So Jody, what you're suggesting is something that we have been interested in. And in fact, we have a notice of fund availability that's been out, making our funds available to developers to create or preserve community affordable housing. We have it on the town website under that MAHT. One of the avenues of possible use of our funds is this. So this is definitely consistent with what we're promoting. And we appreciate you coming.
I was actually at one of those early meetings when I think Joan was there and maybe a bunch of other people that are still on the trust and talking about this. Landlords like me, we need technical assistance because we have no idea how to go after these funds, what you're looking for in terms of what you need from us. How do you do it? I believe if you have under 5 units, you have to market using the affirmative fair market housing concepts, but you don't have to spend $10,000 or $20,000 to have a consultant do a plan for you. So just that piece of information took me, 7 phone calls to even hear that from somebody.
Yeah, you would just have to, that's right. You just have to abide by federal fair housing laws under 5.
Exactly. But at first I was told, oh no, you need to spend $10,000. I said, what if I have 1 unit that's vacant? I'm going to spend $10,000 to do a marketing plan? That makes no sense. So it's the technical assistance that I think putting together some kind of a template as to how you go about doing this. I think you'll have a number of units coming on board every year.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So the total number of apartments in the building are 7.
Yes.
So you've mentioned 4 units could possibly fit under this category.
Yeah, I would think to start, I would probably start at 4.
And is it, do you know have you done like an income, you know the income status of those residents and their?
I've not interviewed them. I mean, but I have a good feeling that they at least 4 of them are going to be under that 80%. And I probably have some at the 50% level.
And the rents that you're charging right now, if you were to assess them how would you characterize them within the area median income? Are they market? What is the rent?
I would say the rents that I'm charging now are more like at the 50% level. And a lot of that is that people have been there a long time, and I know if I raised their rents, they'd have to move out.
Yeah. I'm assuming you would retain ownership and you would just look to the support of the combination of the home funds
Mhm.
and affordable housing trust funds to, in essence, write down the mortgage amount to allow you
Well,
to.
we've owned the building since 1995, but there's no mortgage on the building. So, so that's not an issue. It's really more if I could get funds to make the building better, safer. I think sprinkling in a building like that, there are lots of them in town that are not. I think that would be a really good use of money. I think putting new windows in, just basically making it nicer. But in return for that, we put a deed restriction on it, but I get funding in order to do some of those improvements.
It's the rehabilitation involved with upgrades.
Yes.
And in return for that financial support, you would put on a deed restriction.
Correct.
In perpetuity. Okay.
Yeah,
Any other?
concept.
Great. Any questions? Chris, Muffin, Peggy, Gretchen, Joan?
Oh, I have a couple of ideas about this. I think this is really worth pursuing. When Jody said she needs technical assistance, I'm wondering if that's something that we could explore. I don't know whether it's someone like Bev or someone else. I don't know, but there's probably expertise out there that could be brought to bear and would, as Jody suggested, set up a template that other people could use as well. The other thing is that to monitor, we need to do some monitoring over the years coming up, and I think maybe part of this could be figuring out a cost-effective way, whether it's hiring the North Shore the cooperative housing group or the home consortium in PB. I don't know, somebody's going to be able to do it, but to be able to assess different ways of doing monitoring that would be required in a cost-effective way, I think would be a great idea at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, if there's nothing in the town right now that we could piggyback on, we'd have to explore that.
Yeah. So, and I think the other thing that's really important for me anyway, and I would imagine other landlords like me, is that we'd have to find a way to get it on the SHI without having to kick my tenants out of their units, certainly.
Yeah. Having that uncertainty, would that prevent you from moving forward with this plan?
Yes, it would. It would. I mean, it's uncertain now, but I'm hoping that the DHCD is going to make a change here. I don't think this is a hard and fast rule. There's nothing in writing that I have read, and I've read every document on the DHCD site. There's nothing that addresses apartments that are being renovated with tenants in place that are income qualified. It's just, it's an unwritten policy that they have that they're not included.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But if for some reason that remains outstanding or uncertain, would you consider everything that you said, knowing that at the end you would have the rehab work financed and you'd have deed restricted units?
John, I just think financially, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is a gift. Basically, this is not, I didn't do a break even. This is definitely giving up value and annual revenue. And we'll continue to keep our tenants in there. They're a great group of people. We don't have to do this. But I think the SHI is an important incentive that would be necessary.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that the financing wouldn't change. The question is, the financial need wouldn't change. The question is, is there a possibility of getting these on the SHI?
Right.
And I'm just thinking out loud that at least having them deed restricted and having it in place for that would be an important.
Right, but I'm not going to put a deed restriction on unless I know that they're going to go on the SHI.
Okay, it's fair of you to say that.
Okay, I'm just being very honest here.
No, okay, so
So the letter that's going to the state that's requesting the Powder House buildings be put on the SHI, it's the same thing, Jody, right? You're in the
Yes,
same
it's
situation.
absolutely the same thing. Yes, it is.
I remember that meeting 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and you were there, and it seemed like a good idea. But now that we've been through a little bit more in this town, it makes so much sense to me to try to work something out there. And I don't know who else we talk to at the state and how we can get that letter in front of somebody that can actually move it. I don't know if is it a politician? Is it?
No. It's definitely not a politician. The letter is going to a woman named Jennifer Maddox, who is she's with the DHCD. She's an undersecretary. I've actually spoken to the woman who's in charge of policy there. Her name is Alana Murphy, I think. So, they're very accessible. And I've spoken to another woman who is in charge of SHI related stuff. And she told me something completely different from what Powder House Lane, this was like a year ago.
Yeah.
So again, I think I think there's some wiggle room here, and I'm hoping that this letter and also getting other communities to back us up. I mean, I think of all these communities across the North Shore could do the same thing.
Right.
So the benefit of you making a presentation here, Jody, is possible coming attraction, assuming the SHI goes favorably. But I think it also prompted me to, I know when Chris talks about getting some technical assistance, perhaps the Affordable Housing Trust could consider using some of our funds to get a consultant to tease out a little bit more. I know we've done a bunch of internal thinking about how we could operationalize this, but it might be good to have someone who's a real specialist as a consultant scope out and provide a template that would guide someone like Jody or another property owner.
I think you'd be surprised to know that the town of Peabody, the city of Gloucester, I mean, a lot of these other towns are grappling with the same thing. How do we do marketing across communities? I mean, this whole idea of doing marketing, who comes up with a marketing program for, 3 units in Manchester? It makes much more sense to do this on a consortium basis. So that's one of the things that I've been trying to work on that. I am willing to work more on it to kind of do this research. I think hiring a consultant right now is, these people that I've talked to, every one of them said to me, Jody, if you need any other help, if you have any other questions, give me a call. We've got experts all around us that we can tap into. But there's nobody. I think maybe what I wanted to come to you, John, and your group is,
yes,
there's somebody on the Affordable Housing Trust that I could work with. And as I get information, bounce things off of them and get them to actually own this as a thing, as a program that is worthwhile for you to put some efforts behind.
Well, certainly we can available. I know I've been available. Chris has been available. Peggy has stepped up on other avenues. So we do have, Joan has done work. We all have reached out in different ways. So, I mean, at a minimum, you can continue your correspondence with me, and then I could continue my outreach to my fellow trust members.
Okay. Well, if there's any particular person on the trust who feels that they have a passion for doing this, I mean, I sometimes I think it's great from an accountability standpoint is, do we have a time frame of putting together a program, and what do we need to know, and how do we document it, and how do we bring other people in and so forth? Is that something that would be amenable, that you'd be amenable to looking at it, as opposed to I'm here to help or I'm here to help or whatever? It's, maybe there's one person that would be interested in working with me on this. You don't have to decide now.
Any thoughts, folks?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, one one thing that I thought of when you were speaking was just maybe it would be worth, something we could do as a group is putting together some kind of forum and send for interested property owners and bring that expertise in too, and really like have a workshop first for like, these are all the different pieces to help people decide whether it's the right option for them or not, and then figure out the follow-on pieces. But I think in the past, folks didn't think so much about preservation as they do now in terms of affordable units. You know, it was always like you said, people were thinking they needed to, you know, build and do other things. But I think more recently, at least in this state, people have realized that properties are flipping really fast, and, you know, traditional affordable places, whether they were on the inventory or, you know, they weren't on an inventory per se, but they had been affordable for many decades and now are gone. So I think the preservation piece is an important part of the whole puzzle. You know, there's many pieces that have to go together for us to get there in terms of access to affordable places to live in town. So maybe that's something we could talk about, is in the future having some kind of more of a technical kind of workshop that we put together, or maybe work with others to put together to sort of help make landlords aware that this is an option, and what all the ins and outs of it are.
Well, I think that's what I'm talking about, figuring out, I mean, I don't think at this point, I wouldn't feel ready to go and talk to other landlords. What are the deed restrictions? What are the years? What's the actual language? What are you signing up for? What are you signing up for to do the fair housing marketing, or whatever it's called? What are you signing up for, you know, in terms of what the limits are, and how do you vet people for their incomes? There's just a lot of minutia in doing this. And I think that putting that together before we talk to landlords, like, this is how you would do it. This is the benefit to the town. This is how you would do it. Try to make it as painless as possible. It's not painless. There's work to be done. And so I just wanted to be realistic and do that research.
If I can just add something to this conversation.
Hi, Irene.
Hi, how are you, Jody? Nice to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you.
Years ago, there was a program that existed, and it still does today, and it's called MRVP. And it's the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program, which is very similar to what she's talking about. And it was loans that the state would give to landlords with a deed restriction, so that there would be affordable housing or low-income housing units. So I think if you talk with DHCD and mention that MRVP program to them, and ask them if there's something similar to that can be set up. And that may be, you know, open a door. And if I get an opportunity, when I talk to them, I'll be talking with them tomorrow. I will ask somebody myself if there's something still available in that category.
Yeah, I mean, MRVP is mobile.
No,
Unless,
no. It's Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program.
well, I understand.
It's not mobile. Yeah.
Unless it's tied to the
Deed restricted to the property.
Okay, so because it sounds like you're talking a little bit more about a project-based, Irene, in which case there would be a restriction.
Well, it would be considered a project-based because it's a deed restriction to that property.
Okay, as long as that's
Private landlords that went out and they got loans to upgrade their houses, do improvements. And with the deed restrictions that they would always rent it for X amount of years for low income or affordable.
Okay, I may be giving you a call.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, Jody, why don't you do this? Keep me in the loop. I know the Affordable Housing Trust has got to do a little homework on this concept of getting expertise, getting a technical assistance. I love Peggy's idea of having a forum, bringing in expertise, working with you and others to have a workshop to explore about the possibilities, understanding that this whole SHI issue will be the elephant in the room. But, you know, at least we could take a step forward and try to prepare ourselves.
So can I ask Jody, could you sort of keep a log of all these different programs and people you're talking to and phone numbers and things? So at least we have, you know, some material we can work with when this thing comes together.
Thank you. I definitely have that. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, good, great.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Joe.
everybody.
Thank you. So we just have some more administrative items here. Are folks okay to approve the minutes that were sent out and hopefully reviewed by everyone dated August 26th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 26, 2021.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Excellent. Why don't we count that approved? Thank you, Chris, for stepping in when in Sue's absence. She's issued the technical assistance hours and tasks. She's not here to talk about it, so why don't we just
Put those out.
put that aside. Joan, you okay to talk about treasurer's report?
yeah, there's really nothing to report. It's been a very quiet month. Some vacations. We're in the way a little bit of getting the $200,000 transferred from the CPC to us, but that will happen as soon as possible. We'll get that done. But basically, so the balance.
I've signed what I need to sign, right?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Did you do it when you were on vacation?
Well, I think it was before that, prior to September. I know in the past we had to do an amended grant agreement or something between Affordable Housing Trust and the CPC. Could you just make a note to ask Sue to see if?
I'll check in with her tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'm around if there's anything I need to review or I'll circulate amongst the Affordable Housing Trust members for our. How about if can I make a motion to authorize me to sign on behalf of the Affordable Housing Trust an amended grant agreement between Affordable Housing Trust and the CPC?
I'll second that.
Folks in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Chris, if you can reflect that so that just gives me the ability to look at the grant agreement. It'll be circulated and then we don't have to have another meeting like this to give me the authority, but at least we'll have a great. What else do we have? CPC. Okay, the grant agreement. We just talked about that. Any discussion of planning efforts that may be relevant or it may have not been reasonably anticipated?
The only thing I want to say is that we should think about this year's application to the CPC. I know that they're seeking applicants, and we should do that sooner rather than later too.
Do you know what the deadline is for applications?
I think it's December 1.
Yeah, it's usually the beginning of December every year.
Yeah.
So that would be a 2022 request.
Right.
Okay, so we can put that on our.
I'll check in with Sue about that tomorrow too, just to see if we can use what we used last year and change the date on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. We do have the template of the narrative that we could work.
Yeah, and this fall town meeting isn't going to happen until a couple of weeks into November, so we should probably just get that application in and not wait to see what the temperament of any of the articles are.
Yeah.
Always the politician.
Not really.
Before we rush off and we don't see each other or have an opportunity to talk for another month, what keeps ringing around my head here now is what was discussed moments ago having to do with the Affordable Housing Trust considering moving on, for lack of a better word, a request for a proposal from a development consultant to assist us in that whole outreach to owners of property and help us identify what are the issues that need to be ironed out, what needs to be clarified so that we could have a clear message to building owners.
I think probably, John, the biggest issue, people are gonna either join in and feel encouraged to work with us and convert units, is that SHI issue.
I was gonna say 3 letters.
Yeah, I mean, it just is. I mean, yes, we need to be ready and have a template ready and the technical assistance ready, but I think it's that SHI that, you know, there'll be hopefully more people feeling inclined to want to work with the trust and convert units with deed restrictions if they get on the SHI immediately. So the letter needs to go to DHCD, and we need to wait and see what happens. And we all know the state moves slowly. I don't think that's a decision that's going to come overnight.
So then I think everything what you said is quite fair. So why don't, if we can just keep this on our burner,
right,
and we can turn up the flame quickly based on what we hear from DHCD.
Right. I mean, if I can remember, for any of us back that far when we initially had our trust group put together, one of the first things we did was invite landlords, you know, property owners in.
Right.
And so we knew back then that we'd need to be able to provide technical assistance, but we just haven't had a property owner come to us.
And back
Now
then,
we have, which is wonderful, but it's that SHI that's hanging everything up.
well, back then when we were meeting with owners of properties, I never in my wildest dream thought that if we were to make a conversion and create a deed restricted unit with an income eligible tenant, that it wouldn't be eligible for SHI.
I was thinking the same thing when Jody was talking.
Because of Powder House.
Yep.
So it's an interesting. So okay, so why don't we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll be ready to.
You know, it's kind of too bad that that Jody feels that she wouldn't convert these things unless it was on the SHI. It's kind of one of the perverse things that's happened because of the 40B, I think, is that it's kind of made
The
people
negative
think about-
effect.
Yeah, it's just kind of a bad taste in your mouth as you do these. But the outcome is going to be great. So I guess
Yeah.
take the medicine and enjoy the good health afterwards.
John, is this something that you think like CHAPA could help the town? You know how CHAPA does these technical assistance things, especially in smaller towns, like they're working with Essex right now around affordable housing stuff. And I think the town got a grant from them to do it. So I don't think it was at a large expense to the town, but maybe that's
Excellent point.
one way to engage.
It could be MHP as well. It could be a mass housing partnership because they have provided us technical assistance. So how about if I talk to Sue? I mean, she'll see this reflected in the notes.
Yeah.
And then how about I'll give her a ring.
I think that CHAPA, I watched that webinar. I think they could become a valuable tool for us as a small trust group, that everyone has lots of other interests and work and everything. They could be valuable in the marketing piece. And once we get a sense of what happens mid-November at a very potentially cold afternoon, you know, we may find we're going to need CHAPA or, you know, services of a marketing agency that specializes in just the work that we do. Go ahead.
Jody mentioned something else which is interesting too, which is the idea of sort of a regional approach to this. So Essex, I think, has got an affordable housing trust. I know Hamilton and Wenham do.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if we all work together.
Gloucester does, yeah.
We could do something on a bigger scale than just Manchester.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was thinking, just because CHAPA's made this big effort, especially in smaller towns and areas like ours, to try to work with smaller communities and mid-sized communities around how to do it, because it is different. And that way it's not like us having to find somebody to provide the specific, you know, maybe if we tap into that, then they, like you're saying, we could make it broader, because Essex is a small, I mean, Manchester is a small town, but if we did a cluster of towns and did some kind of workshop that brought in, figure out the region of, maybe if we just stick to the smaller towns like a Rockport, Manchester, Essex, whatever kind of thing, because Gloucester's bigger and they have like a much larger community development staff to work on these things compared to towns like Manchester and Essex and Rockport. So maybe there's some way to do something like that, because realistically, we can't provide the level of services that I think that particular homeowner was talking about. We don't work for the town, like we're all volunteers that have jobs. So we can't provide that level of service. Maybe this would be a way to get that for people.
Right. And that's one of the reasons, we have the CPC funds, is to utilize them this way.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe that's part of the CPC grant explanation this time,
Yeah, that's a great idea.
in terms of trying to build some kind of regional piece.
Mm-hmm.
Just as long as we don't have to do any emergency calls.
No kidding. Yeah, maybe this would be a positive regional approach.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense. And, I think also there's things that we could, I know the Essex initiative is younger than the Manchester one. And I think, because there's someone in my office who goes to the Essex ones now. And I think there's ways we could help them too, just sort of what the experience has been for you all in starting it, and where we're at today and some of the types of things that group could do. That I think they have a motivated group there, and I know Chapa's working with them. That's what made me think of it, because we were talking about them the other day.
I don't see anything else on the agenda but for setting for our next meeting.
All right. I'm gonna get my phone.
Do you want to look for a month out? I think I'm out on the 27th, but I would be available on Thursday the 28th. I don't know how folks think about that. Or even if you wanted to do the week earlier, that would be fine with me.
I'm sorry, what date are we looking at?
I was suggesting either the 28th or the 21st.
Yeah, either one, but I'm one person.
I know that I'm going to have a CPC meeting on either the 21st or the 28th. They haven't determined that yet. So that's all I have to say.
So we'll pick one, and then the CPC will pick the same one.
Yeah, that's inevitable. Either date's okay with me.
Who is the new chair, Joan, of the CPC?
Jack still is.
Oh, for some reason I thought there was a newbie. I thought
Woody's back on, that's all.
that's what it was.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, let's pick a date, because everybody else that responded to the CPC said they could do either one. So let's pick a date, and then I'll let them know that the other date's better for me.
It can't be that date.
Why don't we do the 21st then?
Okay.
Sounds good.
And why don't we say it's the same time, 6?
Okay.
6 p.m.
And I'm thinking, before we split, I'm thinking aloud about how to reach out.
Actually, I was going to say, John, we should be, because we should be meeting before the fall town meeting, so that the board develops the strategy, if necessary, to speak on any other articles besides our own.
Well, good idea.
I just realized that that's also the night of the open house at the Memorial School for the whole town to go to.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a date. Oh,
Yeah, October
21st.
21st
October
at 6
22nd.
o'clock.
would you get your own special invitation, Gretchen?
I saw it in the paper, in the cricket.
Yeah, I just thought being one of the largest,
That's how I took notice of it.
I thought it might be being one of the largest, most established and respected families in town. You guys got.
I know, but I have nobody left over there. Well, that's not true. I have a great niece in there right now.
Want to
All
try to
right, so not the 21st of October.
how about October? So that might pose a problem for Joan as well. Then
Yeah, sure. It's gonna be a problem for the CPC.
we better get the 28th in before she does.
Yeah.
Is that or the 22nd or something?
No, don't plan
Well,
on me.
22nd's Friday.
No, 20,
Say the 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we do the 28th? And Joan, if for some reason you have a problem, you can get back in touch with us.
I will.
There.
And then I started to say, I made a commitment, so to speak, to reach out to Jay to work on some language that we think would be appropriate for them to consider as ways to alter what is currently written.
can I speak to that a little bit? I mean, frankly, I don't think there's any language that's going to make this a good thing, frankly. Unless the language is that it's null and void. And furthermore, the one about the development, pacing of development is going to be thrown out by the Attorney General, even if the town approves it.
The number of units, you mean, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's illegal. You can't do that in any town.
right.
And the idea of the access road, I mean, what would happen to Masconomo Street, for God's sake? That's ridiculous.
Like you were saying too, with the numbers of the units, anyone who wants to do that or more is going to do a special permit, and the ZBA can just toss that out. So
Yeah,
I don't know what it
exactly.
really accomplishes.
It doesn't, all it is it's, they're all sort of excited. This is all a blowback from the 40B, and they're just trying to ride that wave, and it's just going to hurt the town.
Yeah, because I don't think, like you said, I don't think it accomplishes what people are going to think it will because of the way permitting and zoning works, so.
It could work against the whole thing, honestly. As soon as I read it, I just felt like it was such a negative. Just reinforcing the image of
Being
a
exclusive,
community that doesn't want anybody else here. I just didn't like it.
John, I wonder if the approach from the trust should be, I have to wonder if Jay and Denny Hall didn't get some kind of sense of our concern tonight anyway. So we appreciate that they're willing to kind of use some flexibility in the wording. So I wonder if your approach with Jay is to find out now, after he's heard our discussion, what he's thinking that SEMA might do to reword the articles, if any, if do anything.
Great, yes.
And let him, let them come back to you. You have the sense of what we're thinking.
No, I think that's a great approach. And as you started saying that, I had a feeling you were going to say that. They've heard us.
Yeah.
What is their response, if any? Please get back to us.
Right. And in fairness, if they've had time to think about the things we talked about tonight, because gratefully some folks stayed on for longer than just that topic, maybe they're getting a more continued idea of what the trust is trying to do. So maybe they will see that they need to kind of rewrite the articles. If they decide that they're okay with where they're at with them, then I think the conversation just happens on town meeting floor.
Yep. Okay.
And the trust's approach is
reach out. That's a good approach.
Yeah. I mean, because I don't think we were going to solve it tonight anyway.
That's right.
But they've heard us and they've heard the hesitation, I would think, in people's voices and questions.
Great. Okay.
You think I was hesitating?
Yeah, well, I didn't mean you, Chris.
What was that you said, Chris?
Well, I wasn't hesitating, I guess.
No, I know.
Well, sometimes too, I think people don't realize, like, if you've never had to go for a special permit, if you've never done, I don't know what folks, but I mean, if you've ever had to do that, then you know that those things are no, wall to anything, under a 40B, it's all through this special permit, and some things are less applicable. So the thing they're most concerned about isn't gonna get contained more by that kind of a new rule.
Right. So the bigger issue, and Chris said it, I think, is what do these articles potentially implicate, because they're not going to impact a potentially large project. So really the takedown now is, what is it? So what will these articles really now implicate for any future projects? Because it's not going to touch the project that started all the conversation in earnest about affordable housing in the town.
Yeah, well, this isn't even affordable housing. I mean, the thing that bothers me is, let's say we got 49 new units under construction, or maybe 50 even, and then, oh, Joe Blow wants to build a house. He comes in to get his building permit, and the building inspector says, gee, I'm sorry, Joe, you can't build it because we've already got 50 approved.
Right.
I mean, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right. Chris, did you say, I thought you did, but I'm not sure, that is SEMA or these articles being presented to the planning board prior to a town meeting, or no?
Well, the planning board's having a public hearing to discuss all the articles, including some rezoning things we're talking about.
Right. Okay.
And
Okay.
so this would be part of that. But
So
I
someone
think
from SEMA would be there. Okay.
Yeah, oh, yes. There'll be a discussion with the planning board as well.
And it's
And
a
it'll be-
citizen's
It'll be
warrant.
interesting to see how that goes.
Right.
To make a recommendation too on any zoning change.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Do you know when that is, Chris? Is that dated yet? Do you know?
I don't know, but I'll find out, and I'll send everybody an email.
Email. It just might be interesting for us to
Might be in the
hear
cricket.
other perspectives, right?
Yeah, there'll be
It may
other
help-
perspectives.
Yes. And it just may help us formulate our led
Our
discussion
position?
at town
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, yep.
But I think you're right. I don't think people were thinking about, oh, then somebody who wants to do whatever their private home, or that, oh, they won't be, it's going to affect everything. And 49, I mean, 50 is not that big a number, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
You
The
know,
planning board has it's in the cricket that they're having a public hearing on October 25th at 7.
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
you,
That's
Gretchen.
You're welcome.
very good, Gretchen.
Love that
My
cricket.
Bible.
no, I'm just looking it up now.
All right.
Local news.
Well, I guess the only final item is a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that.
We have a second?
Look at that.
Why don't we close it out? Chris, thank you very much for stepping in to pick up.
Of
the
course.
notes.
Thanks,
Well, don't thank
everybody.
me
Yeah.
yet. We'll see how it comes out.
Thanks.
Great seeing everyone. Thanks. for-
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.